What's going on, y'all? It's your boy Cool Colas here, and you're tuning in to another episode of the Pro-Black Blurred Kingdom podcast. So I got another very interesting topic for y'all today. So go ahead, tune in, sit down, get comfortable, because we got something real important to speak about that I actually talk about quite a bit on Instagram and other social media platforms as well too when I'm on them. So today I want to talk to you all about trauma sauce / trauma porn, what that means, and why that isn't necessarily a good thing for our people, for black people. So, what is trauma sauce or trauma porn? Trauma sauce or trauma porn, I call it trauma sauce. That's my own little coin term for it, but I've seen trauma porn used quite a bit. Is when TV shows, comics, or other comic TV shows, comic movies, and just regular TV shows, I guess, tend to make these statements, and the statements that they use are typically seen or created in a way where the facade is that they are aware and bringing awareness to the issues that impact the black community. So it's creating that facade, and it's also basically saying we're going to showcase these things in order to make black people feel like we understand them, we hear them, we're woke, and we want to do everything in our power to show the world that this is how black people are getting treated. So it almost in a way creates what I believe this idea that we have white allies, or this idea that we have allies who are non-black, etc., etc. And the people who put out these forms of what I call trauma sauce and trauma porn do so in order to make it seem like they are for the cause and they support the empowerment of black people. And they do so by making these statements in whatever forms of media that they're presenting. So, what does that look like? Let's talk about that. You know, anytime you're going to you're sitting down at your crib, you about to turn on the TV, right? And you watch a show, and in the show there's a plot, and there's a black character. It ain't gotta be the main character. It could be, could not be. It doesn't really matter what character it is, but the character is definitely black. And they are in a car and they get pulled over by the police for whatever reason. And most of the time it's for a very low level or non-existent reason that deserves getting pulled over, right? The character gets harassed by the police. They're seemingly innocent, and it looks like they haven't done anything wrong. If anything, they're almost oblivious to the fact that there's an adamant white supremacist police officer that is about to basically tear their ass up. And so they try to be cordial, even friendly with this white supremacist police officer. Then they get attacked. They get pulled out of their car. They get arrested, thrown to the floor, handcuffed, etc., etc. And then the show makes a big statement afterwards, because after this person is jailed and they're going through emotional trauma and all this other shit, then they make some type of statement. They say something to the effect of, as black people, we have done this time and time again in our nation, and our people have always been mistreated, and we need to look out for the lives of black and brown people. That's the type of shit that you hear almost every single time. And that is a prime example of trauma porn. Now, again, the way that I said that, it could vary between TV shows, but it happens so frequently. There's almost not a TV show that focuses on diversity, that doesn't have that type of thing show up. Even to such a degree that some shows will even have this as a thing for several episodes on end. It won't be just a one episode off thing, which is already annoying in itself, but they'll continue this time and time again. I'll give an example when they did that. They did that on All American recently. I love All American, so don't get me wrong. I love that show, and I think it's real interesting. I like look forward to it and all that. But in season 3 of All American, I was not feeling a good chunk of it, and the reason why is because they did that so much. Like, one time they did it was when the character Olivia an All-American, she was, I guess, like this white girl bumped into her or something like that when she was like walking down the street, and she had called her a name or something like that, and Olivia was about to beat her ass. And then I think Spencer, the main character, was trying to like calm her down and telling her it wasn't worth it because something could happen, she could get arrested, whatever. There's another episode where like Spencer and his friends were going to go get froyo, and then the police were harassing their asses. I don't remember if that was season 3 or 2, but that happened too. There was another big thing in season 3 where a black girl, and I guess her name was Tamika, had a similar situation like that, and they kept talking about justice for Tamika and all this other stuff. Anyway, the point I'm trying, and Tamika, by the way, wasn't even like a character for real on the show. They just threw that in there because they wanted to talk about black people and justice for whatever reason. And anyway, the point I'm trying to make though is that like shows will just throw in these little messages a lot of times, and that'll be an example of what I mean by trauma porn. Now, the reason why I think a lot of people aren't really seeing it the way that I'm seeing it is because they're saying, well, what's so wrong with that? They're bringing awareness to us, right? They're making us aware that these things are happening to us. And they're making others aware that, like, we go through these things. And others, because, again, a lot of these words and, you know, that people try to get tricky with this shit. They're not defining shit. And really, when they speak, sometimes I don't even think they know what they're saying. But I think when they say things like others, what they're really talking about is the idea of convincing white people who are racist or who have the facade of appearing racist, because racism obviously isn't just calling somebody a nigger, but, you know, somebody who appears blatantly racist, taking that idea and allowing them to see that we go through things as if to assume that they aren't seeing it, and as if to assume that they don't believe it, that it is a thing. Now, a lot of that, in my opinion, comes from a standpoint in the belief that we need to appeal to white people in a way where we try to force to change them or make them love us. Black people have a bad habit of loving everyone. Everybody talks about how brutal, or when I say everyone, I mean like white people, the white dominate society. They have a very, very big history on talking about what they believe is the brutality, the lack of intelligence and class that pertains in the black community in general. Mind you, we are the most loving, caring, and really, if we're being honest, like clean group of people who have standards for ourselves. You know, there's just certain things, think about it, certain things that black people just won't do, certain things that black people just won't engage in, certain things that black people just won't let fly. That's just how our people are and have always been. We really have, in my opinion, the most class overall. We have the best standards for ourselves. We have the highest esteem of ourselves. We know what power that we have within us, and we also care deeply about other people, but that's not this message that gets made. Now, what happens is these white people, what they try to do is they try to make it seem like they don't know that these things are going on, right? We're talking about these like heavy, like blatant white supremacists, right? And we as black people say we got to change their minds. We got to show them that what they're doing to us is wrong. We got to let them see the error in their ways. That means if you have that mentality, you really don't understand the concept of white supremacy. You don't understand that it is a system, and you don't understand that the idea of it is that it's all about knowing that these are things that are going on, and it's all about denying them so that the idea of benign neglect can be upheld. Benign neglect, which basically makes it so that black people, the things that they've been owed, their just dues, the things that have been taken from them, their people, their ancestors, etc. We're talking about black Americans here. The idea that stuff doesn't need to be repaid, apologies don't need to be given, and reparations don't need to be made, etc., etc. They know these things, but benign neglect was a clause that was made in order to make it so that the entire world ignored what was due to us. So these people, these white supremacists y'all are talking about, they know what they're doing and they know why they're doing it, but we're steady sitting here trying to convince them to treat us right and to treat us differently. And what's happening is white conservatives and white liberals are both capitalizing off of this entire thing. And here's why. And because I don't want to get too far away from this whole trauma sauce topic that we've been talking about. White liberals are the perpetuators of this trauma sauce for the most part. And the reason why is because what white liberals like to do is they like to create this facade that they're so woke. They want to create this facade like they're so into, about, and willing to do anything to adhere to justice and black progression and giving black people what they are owed. They like to create that facade so that in a way they can kind of be in and down with black culture. They can say greasy things, they can do greasy things, they can also kind of like assert their dominance in a different way. They'll be kind of kind to you, but they'll still kind of talk to you any kind of way. They'll still kind of treat you any kind of way. They're still kind of tell you what you're owed, what you should and should not be doing. They still act like white supremacists, just in a different way. So whenever a white person is creating what I call trauma sauce, they are doing that for themselves, not for the benefit of black people. And here is why. Whenever a white person, like on a white media source especially, makes something that is related to the struggles that black people go through, what they're really doing is trying to show the world, hey, we're all about the diversity. We're all about showing quote unquote people of color. I hate that goddamn term. If you're watching this and use the term people of color, slap the hell out of yourself right now, because you should be a damn ashamed of yourself for even believing that that's something that black people should be referred to. Anyway, so they believe that they're adhering to diversity and people of color and all this other trash that they talk about, right? And they believe that by adhering to these things that they're part of the fight, whatever that means. When the real fight, real justice comes from giving black people tangibles, because that's just about the only thing they can do, because they're not necromancers. They can't revive our ancestors that their ancestors killed the hell off and didn't allow them to live full and prosperous lives and take them from like where their origins came from. No, it's not about that, because they can't change that, but they can at least give their descendants the tangibles that they deserve in order to thrive. But instead, what they'll say is, if y'all are marching to stop these bad white people, because they're trying to point the finger at the white people that are bad, like the conservatives, we'll march with you. And that's our way of giving y'all justice. We'll give you all like little trinkets of shit. We'll stop saying stuff like master bedroom, like we gave a fuck about that. We'll take Aunt Jemima off the shelves, like we give a fuck about that. We'll make Juneteenth a holiday, like a lot of us even really were thinking about Juneteenth. Now, mind you, a lot of us are now, but there's a whole lot more of us who probably didn't even know what Juneteenth was before it became big and trendy. Let's be real. I did, but I know a lot of people who didn't. Now, some of y'all may disagree with me on that, but the point that I'm trying to make, and I don't want to get into this idea of people listening to me and then picking apart all this little shit that I say. The big point that I'm trying to make here is that we accept trinkets too much, and it basically relieves white people from the responsibility that they have to give black people what they deserve, which is why a lot of us black people have taken a stance to say, well, fuck it then. We'll get our own things, our own tangibles, and what we will end up doing in the long run is trying to just fend and do for ourselves because nobody else is trying to help us, and nobody else is trying to is doing right by us, and all of these other groups are getting the things that they deserve and are getting laws put in place to protect them and all these other things. But here our people are still suffering and being told that we need to just pick ourselves up by our damn bootstraps. Point I'm trying to make here is that white liberals believe that they're not part of the problem when they do things like putting trauma sauce into the media that they create, because they're saying that they support, or they're trying to give this message that they support black people and what they go through on a daily basis, when they don't realize that they actually, well, not they don't realize, when they are actually part of the problem. They realize this shit. The point that I'm trying to make here is that none of that is for the benefit of black people. It's for the benefit of white people, because at the end of the day, what can they do? They can go back and they can say, well, look, we support black people. I mean, look what we do. Look at the content that we put out there. And that, what does that do for them? That gives them more people who look at their content, because then some of these black people out here, as I said earlier, who really don't, they're really not on game about a lot of this stuff. They're accepting of everybody, so they're not questioning things. They're not questioning what these white liberals are doing, and they just kind of roll with it. And they say, hey, there goes the woke white dude. Look at them. They're in the fight. They care about us. Yada, 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 yada. That's the white homie right there. They say stuff like that. And so there they are, allowing this stuff to fly. And they continue to support when white media puts out these narratives about our people. Here's my other problem with that. What they then do is you get a lot of these off-code black writers who get up in some of these TV shows and studios, and they write stories in an off-code way. And now other black people look back and they say, well, it wasn't a white person who did this. There was a black writer, yada, 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 yada. But you don't realize that they have that mentality because of what the white-dominated society has kind of brought upon them. And not only that, too, they don't make the rules. The people who make the rules are white-dominated society. I mean, like, look at the Orlando Jones situation in American Gods. He wanted to really, get out there and do some stuff with the god of trickery, Anansi, the African god of trickery. He wanted to do all this stuff, but then them white people up in there told him straight up, we don't like the message that you might put out there by saying this and that. He was trying to say a lot of real pro-black stuff, and they didn't like the message that he was trying to put out. So they said, no, we gonna X-nay on whatever you about to say. So to me, the way that I saw that is an example of why I said we really don't have power for real. If anything, we're being used as tokens and pawns to be able to write those narratives and be the mouthpiece that white people want us to be for other black people, so other black people can then believe that this is the way that we should move. So there's a lot of problems with that. Then the other issue too is when you go back, right? You go back and you look at the idea of why they're putting out all of this trauma sauce stuff. It makes other people sit there and believe that these white companies that talk about black people and our issues support us, so they therefore will now support the company. It's a business strategy. It's so people can continue to look at their product. People can continue to enjoy the content that they put out. People can continue to accept that what they're doing is noble, and then we in turn in our own way feel that that's the way that we should move when we think about how we can bring justice to our own people and progression to our own people, when the real answer is getting real legitimate tangibles, and that's something that has not been given to us. Here's another reason why trauma sauce and trauma porn is bad for black people. Trauma sauce and trauma porn is bad for black people because all it does is re-depress the black person who already knows this. This is what I say all the time, and people don't really understand what I mean by it. And if you're white and you're listening to this and you take offense to this, then you are definitely who I am speaking about, and you should be mad. Chew on it. The issue that I always see, and I've seen this a lot in the workplace, even a lot from my own experiences, a whole lot from my own experiences, is when things happen racially and they're weird, white people, whenever they're quote unquote learning about what they should not do around, their black friends, coworkers, etc. For them, it's a quote unquote learning experience. For black people, it's just trauma, because they've gone through this shit over and over again. And now here is some damn white motherfucker who basically has this like supremacist value, right? And doesn't really know that they have it. They're sitting there and they're saying this and that to you any kind of way, not realizing that this is a thing. And then you tell them about it, they're defensive or whatever, or they try to like find a way to make it seem like what they said made sense or did make sense. And then what it ends up being is they say, oh, well, you know what? I thought about what was said here, and this was a learning experience for me. But guess what? For the black person, it wasn't really a damn learning experience. It was rehashed trauma, because we've seen that so many times inside of our job. We've seen it so many times outside of our job. We've seen it so many times watching television, and that's the point I'm getting to. Why would we go get treated like shit, right, out in the streets? If you go to the store, if you're just walking down the street, if you're at your job, come home, want to relax and watch a good television show, to turn on the TV, and then to see, guess what? There goes our people again, pulled over. Shoot, my cousin, my mama, my daddy, me, was just pulled over, just arrested. I saw somebody who looked like me just do that in real life, and guess what? I'm seeing that shit again when I turn on the TV. Think about that, y'all. We're re-traumatizing ourselves when we turn on the TV and then we see that shit, and all we trying to do is see some action. We're trying to see a fighting scene between two characters, and then they want to make the police pull over the black dude because he claims because he's driving while black. And we got to see a whole story about that. Or we got to see how we got to fight for justice, and we got to see all this other off-code shit that we done seen all damn day. So it's literally to be traumatized while we're in our real life, and then to be re-traumatized on our own damn couch watching a television show. Because it's in every television show, not just comics and all this other stuff in movies, but also literally in regular TV shows, everyday sitcoms, black or white. And then that's the biggest problem. It's all for the sakes, in my opinion, of forced diversity. And what people don't really understand about forced diversity is it's not for the benefit of black people whatsoever. Black people have been watered down. Black people should be the highest priority in this nation to everyone, because black people built this country. Black Americans built this country, right? We built this country, and our people built this country. And we are the people who are treated the absolute worst, given the absolute worst, told to survive on the absolute least, and yet and still being forced to be grouped in with other groups of people, and then it being called a promotion of diversity. That is a backhand compliment, and that is an insult to black people. That's basically like saying, if somebody gets into a car accident, right, and then another individual gets a paper cut that like has been bleeding for a little bit, and this person who just got into this car accident, they got gashes all over their face, gashes on their legs, they got a broken leg and arm, and then you're saying, you know what? We got to make sure we treat both of these people. We got to treat both of them at the same time, because they both have injuries. Look at them. They both have injuries. See how that looks? We have this idea that struggle should be generalized when we're looking at groups that are not considered black. So now, again, that goes back to my statement earlier, and see how everything I'm saying kind of ties into each other? That goes back to that idea of benign neglect. When you look at the idea of benign neglect, what you're basically saying is white people can act like they don't owe black people A, B, C, and D, because we're making it seem like it's really not that big of a deal. Although debts are known to be owed, we can move like we don't. And that's what forced diversity does. It continues to adhere to that concept of benign neglect by making it seem like these other groups are being promoted, and because they're in this category of people of color, that there's some form of diversity that's being promoted in these things that we're seeing. So to me, I think that it's forced diversity because it is supposed to exemplify, really to the benefit, obviously, of whoever is creating this content, that they are for the cause of people who are not considered white in this nation visibly. We're talking about visibly here, y'all. Not talking about what y'all put on the census. We're talking about visibly. So, my issue with trauma sauce and trauma porn is not to say that awareness is not needed. Awareness is absolutely needed. Awareness is absolutely 100% needed. But we need to think about, one, the messenger who is putting it out and what their motive is and why that is harmful to us. Another thing that we really need to consider when we look at trauma sauce is our own mental stasis. We go through so much all the time just to see that same thing again and again and freaking again, y'all. That's not cool. You know it's not. The third thing that you have to consider when you look at trauma sauce or trauma porn is, does it actually just, are you really getting the content you want? It takes away from the damn content. You want to see something else. You want to see something that has to do with the plot of the show. You don't want them to have to take a break from what they're trying to explain in the show because of the fact that they want to do some type of diversity shit, you know? You want to see what actually happened. You want to see the story. You want to see the action. You want to see the adventure. You want to see the plot. You want to see the face turns. You want to see the heel turns. You want to see all that stuff. But you can't see none of that stuff because they're trying to say power to the people, Black Lives Matter, and all this other shit that they really probably don't even mean. And you know what? It's not even that they probably don't mean. They don't mean it. You know their asses don't mean it. And here's why. And I'll talk about this in another podcast. Here's why I had an issue with the whole George Floyd thing and why I said that it was a trend. A lot of people, black people, please stop doing this. Like, I swear to God, like, every time y'all do this, I just want to slap the hell out of y'all. If you're somebody who I've talked to and you hear this and you hear me say that, yes, I am talking about you. I really am. Like no disrespect, but just be weary. I am talking about you. You need to slap the hell out of your damn self. If you're one of those people who saw that George Floyd situation and said, if I ever questioned it and said, you know, it's so funny how black people, you know, have been having this happen to them. Black men especially have been killed by the police, by these white supremacist officers for years and years and years. And all of a sudden, they want to pay attention to George Floyd. And then your ass comes back and says, I think that it attributes to, it was the fact that he said that he was crying for his mother. Look at him. He was an older black man crying for his mother. You know how damn stupid that shit sounds? So you mean to tell me that it is more important to empathize with an older black man who gets brutalized and killed by a white supremacist officer than a younger black man? It doesn't deserve press. It doesn't deserve highlights. It doesn't deserve awareness. You mean to tell me it deserves a different magnitude because it was an older black man who cried for his mama? Get the fuck out of here, y'all. I'm sorry. I'm on my soapbox a little bit about that. But I just want to know, you slapped the hell out yourself if you ever had a conversation with me and that came out your mouth. Oh, it was because of that. Stop that. Stop that, y'all. Stop that shit. Y'all need to realize that anytime a white person seems interested, like super interested to the point of George Floyd, the George Floyd situation, in things that happen to our people on that magnitude, that it is a trend for them. And here's the reason why I know that it has to be a trend, because all these little messages that they're putting in these TV shows and movies, etc., etc., a lot of this stuff was going on before George Floyd, right? Black men were getting killed ridiculously, and that doesn't exclude Sandra Bland or Corin Gaines, but like black men especially, the main people who are getting killed in these little white supremacist officer situations, right? And they didn't get that type of press from the white media whatsoever. So what I'm trying to say is that it was a trend, because if they felt that that was important to them, they would have kept that same energy every single time that a black person got killed, and they would have done something about it. But they didn't. What they did was they made it a trend because they capitalized on it, especially when the George Floyd thing happened and made an uproar. And they said, basically, now that everybody seems to be quote unquote unified on this issue, why don't we produce more content where we show how black people have been getting killed by police in the streets, etc., etc. It just wasn't, it was a thing. So it's like they knew that it was going on. That's why they were doing it before the George Floyd thing. That's why in TV shows you did see that trauma sauce and that trauma porn and stuff like that. That's why you did see that. But at the same time, realize that they're being selective on when it matters. And the reason why they're being selective is because they're only doing that not because they care about when it happens to all black people. It's because they are profiting off of trends, and they want other people to be able to support them. And that is the easiest way in this type of quote unquote like woke society, where individuals are all about the justice and how they feel like justice can be met. That's the way to keep them interested. Keep all of us whose eyes aren't open interested. Now, I want to get off of like police brutality or police insanity, I guess, white supremacy for a bit. And I want to talk about another form of trauma sauce that I see. There's a lot of old school trauma sauce too, y'all. A whole lot of old school trauma sauce. A lot of old school trauma sauce that I have personally seen is like slave movies where somebody's getting beaten. Ozzy is a good nigga type of content. That type of stuff is also trauma porn as well too. And then you get up in there, and what they'll do is like they'll up at some movie theaters, like for example up here in Kalamazoo where I live at, I believe I want to say it's the movie theater in Portage. I could be wrong about this. If you're a Kalamazoo viewer and I'm wrong, feel free to correct me, but I believe like what they do is on Martin Luther King Day, that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day, but they like make it so that certain movies are only $1. And it'll be like black justice movies, and it'll only be for like that day, for Martin Luther King Day. People will go and they'll see the movie or whatever, and it'll be like more white people than black people up in that bad boy, right? And when they go up in this movie, like what they'll do is like they'll be up in there, white people folks will be up in there crying and shit. And you know why they do that? Because that's the one day where they feel compelled to feel bad. It's trendy. That shit is trendy to them. You got all these other days of the damn year, and you choose Martin Luther King Day to cry about something that happened to black people, and you continue to be a white supremacist when you go home in your job and use all these damn microaggressions with black people all the time, all day, every day. Stop it, y'all. Because that is literally what happens. But yeah, I've seen trauma sauce in so many different movies, so many different television shows. It is not even funny. From a slave standpoint, I mean, you got the color purple. Color purple was made to make black men look like they just ain't shit. You got them. Them is a whole nother discussion. We can have that discussion at another time. That was extra trauma sauce in slave-like movies and just stuff like that. We don't have to see that all the time. Let's see some things where our people are portrayed as powerful. When there was especially like in Egyptian culture, our people were portrayed as gods and kings and queens. And for now, I get it. People feel like that's a trend, and people get into this like using Hotep as a pejorative. Again, another topic for another time. We won't get into that today. But they get into all that type of stuff, and then they're like, well, not every black person can be a king, can be a queen, yada 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 yada. They get into all those topics. Point I'm trying to make is, when you see slave movies and movies that talk about like how our people were chained up and all this other stuff, like, that's not to show empowerment. That's for white guilt purposes. That's for white people to cry and then show you all that, or exemplify from their perspective that they care about you when they don't, because they could just give you tangibles if they did. But instead what they do is chastise the shit out of you when it's time to vote, and they tell you to vote for the damn liberals because it's your civic duty. And then y'all's asses follow suit and do the exact same thing, and y'all look silly. Now, the point that I'm trying to make here is that I feel like slave movies do the same thing. They break your spirit. They make you feel powerless. They make you feel like our people were powerless, and that's not the only history of our people. Think about the black groups that have stood up to white supremacists who have tried to colonize them. Think about the Haitian Revolution. Think about the Maroons. There's a lot of times in society where that necessarily didn't even take place. Again, we were kings and queens once. I mean, we done tons of things before what happened to us. Think about like the fact that we were the inventors of math and science, and how black people brought math and science to Asia, because a lot of people like to associate intelligence with like the Asian community, and they don't really understand that it was what are known as Africans who brought that technology to Asia. And it's like, nobody tells those sides of the story. Nobody tells those things. Nobody brings truth to power in that, because we're so busy just re-traumatizing each other in the common shows that we watch. Now, some people are like, what about this documentary? What about that documentary? People aren't searching for these random documentaries unless they're popularized by damn Netflix or some other place that they watch these regular TV shows. My point is that they shouldn't have to just dig up a documentary to basically get the information that they need. They should be able to see the messages in these television shows the same way that white supremacists put messages in the television shows to basically poison your mind. Because they don't just put it in documentaries. They put it in cartoons that kids watch. They put messages in comic shows and movies and comic movies and regular sitcoms. Those messages are there everywhere. Again, I don't want to get too much off of trauma sauce, but all I'm trying to say is, like, slave movies, we don't need no more of that. Police brutalizing black people, we don't need more of that. Movies like Precious and things like that, we definitely don't need more about that. Precious will just break your spirit, and you just want to like just take a nap for the rest of the damn day. That ain't cool. That ain't no way to live. Like, I mean, everything about Precious was terrible. I mean, think about it. I mean, the woman she was a big dark-skinned black woman, and like that was already like a thing then, like that, where she would be perceived as not attractive, although like those things don't make you unattractive. Then she was verbally and just to an extent physically abused by her mom. She was raped by her dad, had a kid by her dad, and her dad gave her a STD, or gave her I believe she gave her HIV, I believe. So stuff like that traumatizes us. I almost felt bad even having to say that just now, but I just wanted to exemplify those types of things that are meant to break our spirit. Those things break our spirits, y'all. Those things don't empower us. They make us look like all of our history and our present comes from a place of weakness and a place of needing to have some type of help, particularly from white people, but the idea of just showing that we need help because we're so weak. And that's not right, y'all. We're powerful people. We're creative people. We're people with a lot of talents and gifts and things that, should allow us to, just really portray ourselves in the way that we deserve to be portrayed, not in how white society wants to see us. So my message today, y'all, is trauma porn is not good for us because it only is beneficial to white people who put it out there. And my advice to you all, especially you all who are content creators and are hearing what I'm saying, is if you're going to bring awareness to some of the things that I talked about. But let's try not to focus so much on the things that white people have used to their own advantage so other people can see them in a certain light, including us. I hope that resonates, and I hope that you consider that when you make the content that you're making, because we got to do something different out here, y'all, because this ain't it. Anyway, I hope y'all enjoyed the show. Hope y'all enjoyed the podcast. I hope y'all liked what I had to say. Remember to share. Feel free to let your friends, family, whoever know about my podcast, about the stuff that I've been putting out there. Let them know what I'm doing, what I'm talking about, what I'm saying. And yeah, there'll definitely be more to come. All right, y'all. I'm about to get up out of here and enjoy the rest of the day. I just wanted to chat with y'all a little bit about the trauma sauce. Anyway, hope y'all have a good one, and I'll talk to y'all later. Peace.